comes to my awareness that we live in a time where I think a lot of people are trying to find love, are trying to redefine what love means to them before it was defined by movies, by books, by Instagram stories. And I noticed that today there is a huge amount of discourse about what love is, what it should look like, what the right person looks, how women should be treated, how men should be treated, 50-50 relationships. There's just a lot of rules about what love should look like. And a lot of it as well is rooted in self-help, in healing, in betterment, in no longer abandoning the self. And so, really learning to love the self before, stepping into a relationship. I'm not going to say that that's a bad thing. Obviously, I'm part of that community in a sense. And that's also things that I practice in my personal life. That's also a paradigm that I notice for myself. Nonetheless, I do feel that it's very important that at some point we should not blindfoldly, is that a word? It's important to question the stories that we follow, the people that lead us, and why we practice certain things. Because sometimes we can start to do something, we can take on a certain story or narrative or intention for certain actions, for certain behavior. And initially, it might be good from the place that we started to adopt it. But at a certain time, we might overindulge, or too much of something is never good as well. It's always very important to find a balance and to question why we do the things we do. Self-reflection is very important, and it's okay for things to change. It's okay for feelings to change. Sometimes we do things because we felt a certain way at a certain time, but that doesn't mean that it's always going to work for us as we move forward, as time evolves, as life goes forward as well. So, that being said, this is about also questioning self help and just the entire narrative that is really mainstream in the media right now among, I think, millennials, Gen Z, in our ways of talking about relationships and love and questioning who we should be, who our partner should be, how we create healthy boundaries, healthy habits, communication skills, things like that. I'm starting to wonder if our adoption, and I have this every time that things become mainstream, when there's like this critical mass that takes things over, I feel like the scales have been tipped, and it's kind of going to go downward if you don't start questioning certain patterns, certain behaviors, certain stories, certain habits. It's with everything. It's, for example, if we look at the whole body positivity, or just like any narrative that we see in the mainstream, those kind of trends, it's good to a certain point, but it's always important for people to be critical about it, and to also have a counter voice for us to have that balanced perspective on why things are good up to a certain point. I started to ask myself, okay, I see that a lot of us are really stepping into self love, really learning to stand boundaries or stand on business, really learning to show up for ourselves, to make more space for the emotions that maybe in the past we neglected. Honestly, I feel like we as a generation, and I don't know if it's just a small generation or if it's a bigger generation that is constantly faced with a lot of traumatizing images as well. I just feel like the role that media play into our perception of love and emotions and reality have such a big influence on our experiences. And when you look online, when you look at the news, it's very hard to believe in love. It's very hard to believe in the goodness of people. It's very hard to believe in the greater good. It's almost hard to believe that there's a purpose. It's very easy to become very detached, to become very numb, to become very frustrated and jaded with everything that is happening in the world, right? And so I think it's very normal that at a certain point, when the world is causing you so much pain, or when there's so much emotional space to be outsourced outwardly, and when we feel like we have to carry the entire world, or we have to carry the pain of everyone, because basically the world is on fire and that causes a lot of pain. It is important to kind of become selfish and to kind of nurture yourself and set your boundaries and learn to see, like, okay, how much of my energy can I pour into this or whatnot. I'm starting to asking myself the question, is this level of self-love that we are kind of adopting also preventing us from actually feeling the love that we need? Maybe it started from a point where it wasn't self preservation, learning to open up, to respect our own feelings, learning to nurture ourselves, learning to not have codependent relationships. But can it also stop us from experiencing a realistic love? Are we getting a little bit too idealistic because we are so focused on protecting ourselves, on putting up our walls, on preventing ourselves from being hurt? Maybe because we are still uncovering the ways in which we have been hurt in the past, or the ways in which we haven't been able to love ourselves in the past, that our boundaries were overstepped perhaps by friends, by family members, even by societal norms. Are we learning to reconstruct our identity and find out what our place is outside of the voices of external people? That is where self-love can be very important. It's very necessary, and I absolutely advocate for that. And that's something that I'm still learning and practicing continuously in my own daily everyday life. But I start to wonder, is there a point where we get so idealistic and so overprotective of our heart that we are actually blocking ourselves from feeling real love? And are we somewhere afraid to love? Because I think that in real love, we also realize our imperfections as well. I think that real love also encompasses loving people through their good and their bad days unconditionally, loving their imperfections, understanding that people will make mistakes, understanding that sometimes people will trigger certain emotions in you that you will not appreciate, that sometimes they will behave in certain ways that will make you remember something from your past and make you want to run away from whatever the feeling was. Can we understand that sometimes real love also means loving people through their imperfections, giving them space to grow, giving them space to heal themselves, to feel their emotions, to have their own fears, to have their own insecurities, to have their own triggers. And I feel like the reason that we are so afraid to love, and I say afraid, but it might not be the good word. I can feel that we set such high standards, we set such high, boxes, and we have so many expectations because we are afraid to fail in love. We are afraid to get our heart broken again. We are afraid to make the wrong decision. Basically, we are trying to protect ourselves. But might that failure, or that fear of failure, I think sometimes we want to outsource that failure and we try to objectify people. We try to be able to statistically, like, as if love was logical, rational, and like math, we trying to check off different things that we do or do not like about people, why they would or would not make a good match. And I'm not saying this is completely wrong. I think it absolutely is important to have your certain standards and to have your desires. But I think that sometimes we run back to the rationalization of love because we want to prevent failure. And when I think about it today, it just came naturally, randomly. I was wondering, could it be that we are actually running away from the feel of failure because it's not because we think that the other people aren't good for us, but somewhere we might know that the possibility of that failure might reflect back to us that we are not good enough to love, that we are not perfect either, that we also have our flaws, that we also have our insecurities that might never go away. Are we waiting to be perfect to love, or are we looking for perfection in a partner in order to make up for our own imperfection? Because we feel like when someone can tick off all our boxes, when someone never seems weak or always shows up in the ways that we expect them to, that means that they will be the reason that the relationship will actually stand and not fail. But the truth is, relationships take two people, and you cannot expect someone else to carry a whole relationship. That's not an equal give and take, and it's actually a self-fulfilling prophecy when you are trying to prevent the failure by looking for perfection. It's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of responsibility that you're putting on another person, and that cannot be what healthy love is all about. So even though I really appreciate self-love, self-help, setting boundaries, taking care of yourself, realizing what your needs are, I think it's very important to also stay realistic, stay humble, and stay balanced in our way of understanding what love is. It takes two people, and sometimes we are so busy looking at what other people are doing good or wrong, or who other people are or are not, and how that fits our narrative, that we forget to look in the mirror and ask ourselves the question, but am I also good enough to be with this person? Or am I showing up in the ways that this person would need me to show up? Things like that, that's very important. And the truth is, we are imperfect, and there will be days that you will feel less lovable. There will be days that you might annoy the person that you hold dear to your heart, and that's where the fear lies, because there is this wounded child, I think, within all of us that is constantly afraid of being rejected for being imperfect. But I feel like the right relationships, and I feel like the definition of love that I am rebuilding, reconstructing for myself right now, is that even when things are going up or down, or even when you are not your best self, which it looks different every single day, but even when you don't meet the expectations of the other person, which we cannot do every single day, that's impossible. Life happens. We go through things, emotions get triggered. Sometimes we need to hold space for other things more. Sometimes we're more absent. Can we, when we do not meet those expectations of our other partner, give them patience, give them space, give them support, and, still love them despite their imperfections? I think the bravest act of self-love as well is loving someone else in that way, because that truly reflects an integrated part of self-love. It's not just performative, it's not just about the ego, it's not just about the self. It's showing up, giving other people the space to be themselves, to show up for themselves, to set their boundaries, so you can also grow more into that for yourself. And I think in that way, we would really heal our idea of love and our emotions as well. I think that everything comes back to our conceptualization of love and how that goes into our way of approaching relationships. So yeah, I really think we idealize what love is a little too much, and I appreciate a more realistic vision of love. And sometimes the more realistic things, all gold, all glittering gold. Sometimes gold is it's stable, it's solid, it's secure, but it's not always gonna look as enticing every single day, But at least it's something grounded. It's something secure that you can build on. I don't know if gold was the right metaphor for that, but whatever. I'm a little bit in a daze today. The past weeks have been crazy, like processing so many things, so many emotions. But you know what? The future is going to be bright. I have high hopes. I have bright ideas. And yeah, that was it for today. A little thought that I wanted to share. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know how you feel about it. Have you also felt sometimes that it's too much pressure about our ideas of love and relationships on social media in our generation, constantly setting the bar and, never lending grace? It's almost impossible to find someone these days because we don't see people as real people anymore. We just see them as a highlight reel. and we just see them as their social media profiles, and we only see the ups, but we don't want to take the downs with it, you know? So that's a very questionable, that's something that we should ask ourselves some questions with, I believe. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye, guys.